I don't think there's any argument that could exist on any plane of any dimension that could convince me that mobile games are good. My reason for that is my absolute disdain for microtransactions, loot boxes, things of that sort, and phone games, mobile games are just completely littered with them. Did you guys ever play that game Clash of Clans? That one where it was like you'd build up your base and then everyone would attack you and everything took time to build, and so you would build something and then by the time you've played the game for like 2 years, it takes 3 days to build one tower, to upgrade one tower, and you kind of just give up. It's that same game where like if you didn't join your friend's clan, you got kicked out of your lunch table in high school and you were shunned by everyone you thought loved you and cared about you and everyone that you loved and cared about. That game was riddled with microtransactions. You might not have seen it, you might not have cared when you were playing it, but you could use gems to speed up your build process, and you could buy gems, and it was just $2 increments maybe because you wanted to speed something up or you wanted a new worker, but that would eventually add up to $30, and you've spent $30 on a game that you don't even really play because it builds for you all the time, and it's this addiction where you think you're making all this progress, but in reality you're just spending $2 and getting to see a different screen every time you log on. God, I hate microtransactions so much. So loot boxes have been gaining a lot of attention lately. Loot boxes and microtransactions in general, which is a fantastic step forward. If you don't know what I'm talking about, recently Belgium actually banned the practice of adding loot boxes to games, as well as the Netherlands too. The Netherlands also outlawed that same thing. And the reasoning for it is not only is it predatory on the consumer and almost blatant false advertising, saying that the content would actually be there in the first place, but what it's doing is it's causing many kids to decide to gamble and take that chance that they didn't necessarily have to take, but they really, really wanted to because they had that 1 in 100 chance of getting that skin that they could put on their character and never even see for themselves because the game is likely in first person. This is kind of old news, but if you've been kind of behind on all this controversy, I'll explain it to you right now. Essentially, what happened is Star Wars Battlefront 2 released. It was by EA Electronic Arts. They had the Star Wars license and they made the sequel to the first Battlefront game, and they monetized the hell out of it. They took out content and they locked it behind an endless grind. We're talking about you would have to put in probably something like 40 hours in 1 week of play in order to unlock Darth Vader or whatever character you're going for. I never played Battlefront 2, so I actually don't know a ton about the specifics of it, but I do know that Electronic Arts was really, really pushing the idea of monetizing the game and saying, hey, if you want to unlock all of these things that you should have had with the base game, please spend $100 on loot boxes for your tiny chance of getting it. And I think the reason it took people this long to catch on to it is likely to do with the fact that Star Wars is such a heavily followed series, and the Battlefront series of games has always been a huge deal to Star Wars fans and shooter fans as well. So following this controversy came a ton of backlash from the community, and so much so that it reached media sources, which then reached out to people in charge of legislation in other countries, people who are really in charge of setting the rules and the laws for regulations, which is how the Netherlands and Belgium actually got them banned. The game studio who makes NBA 2K, which I think is coincidentally 2K, also issued a statement against the banning of loot boxes in Belgium, which stated this: "While we disagree with this position, we are working to comply with the BGC's current interpretation of these laws. We will be continuing conversations with the BGC in order to explain our view on how NBA 2K and My Team Pack purchases already comply with local laws. If you agree, we recommend that you contact your local government representative to communicate your opinion. We will keep the community posted on any developments. We apologize for any inconvenience." The only inconvenience in there is that people are no longer feeding into their scummy business tactics and purchasing all of these microtransactions that should have just been a part of the base game to begin with. So there, you should be caught up on most of the loot box controversy related things. Essentially, what all this means is that we're moving into an age where we are able to fight the predatory actions of corporate greed. Now, the best part of this is that the movement is growing, and it has just reached the United States in terms of serious movements towards legislation against these kinds of things. Hawaiian Senator Chris Lee has been fighting against loot boxes within the US government for a little while, but it seems as though that legislation has been tabled for a later time as the issue wasn't brought up as an important one at the time. Now that other countries are starting to comply with anti-loot box laws and they're starting to be introduced in new areas, the United States Senate is taking another look at that same thing. U.S. Senator Maggie Hassan, a senator from New Hampshire, encouraged the FTC chairman, whose name is Joe Simmons, to investigate loot boxes during a congressional oversight committee. She asked if Simmons was committed to looking into video game loot boxes, to which Simmons replied yes. Hassan later adds to the conversation, "Given the seriousness of this issue, I think it is in fact time for the FTC to investigate these mechanisms to ensure children are being adequately protected and to educate parents about potential addiction or other negative impacts of these games." The US actually isn't the only one hopping on board at this time. It was reported that the Australian Senate recommended to the federal government in Australia that they enact a comprehensive review of loot boxes in video games. It's clear that the fight isn't necessarily over for people who want to play games from the get-go with all of their content and want to have the opportunity to unlock that content without having to pay $2 every Sunday night for a new Call of Duty skin. But it's a huge step in the right direction for games as a whole. The days of having to spend money to play a game that was incomplete from the get-go are kind of nearing an end here, and we're making great progress. We just have to keep up the support for the movement against loot boxes. We have to keep contacting our representatives if we don't want to see these predatory practices affecting our children, our brothers and sisters, and anyone who tries to just enjoy games casually. Hopefully, if we just keep pushing for this, eventually games are going to go back to the way they used to be. I've never been against DLC map packs and things, but those things were truly extra to the game. They never ended up cutting out original content in order to resell it. And I think that the US moving forward with more senators now focused on the issue is an absolutely fantastic thing. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this content and would like to see more, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Make sure to let me know what you guys think about loot boxes and microtransactions in the comments below. Thanks and have a good one.